and it's our First Amendment right of free speech to question authority.
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of We Are Not Alone, streaming here on Queen City News Plus. I'm your host, May K. Beeler, also the chief transportation correspondent here at Queen City News. Many of you that know me know that I'm a pilot of over 40 years and counting, have flown over 30 different makes and models of aircraft. So aviation and space are my passion. So I'm interested in things beyond the wild blue yonder. And today I'm delighted that our guest is also a pilot, but he has incredible accolades. He probably knows UFOs better than anyone else. And that's because he has investigated and researched over 50,000. That's right, 50,000 cases. As I said, he's a private pilot, a military aerospace and aviation historian, Michael Scrat. He has been investigating UFOs and UAPs for over 25 years. He is an author. Before we bring him in, I'll give you an idea of what you're looking at, what we're going to talk about today. In an effort to maintain an important part of our national history, Michael has recreated dozens of highly credible UFO cases by the use of drawings, as you see here, illustrations, and beautiful commissioned artwork. Many of these include USOs, unidentified submerged objects, actual extraterrestrial encounters, and prehistory UFO cases most of us have never even heard about, that haven't seen the light of day, but he has reviewed these cases, many preserved at the Center for UFO Studies. You've probably seen him on the History Channel. Michael, welcome in. Thank you for joining us. Quite a resume.
Thank you very much, Mickey. Great to be with you.
50,000 cases? You're too young for that. When did you get started?
I've been doing it a little while, so.
Yes, you have. Well, before we get started, I just have to ask you, since we're both pilots, have you ever seen it? People ask me this all the time. Have you ever seen anything while you were flying?
I have not seen anything unusual as I was flying. No, I have not.
We have that in common. Okay. I haven't either. People want us to make up stories, but I haven't seen anything. Not that I remember. Okay, not that we remember. All right, so before we get into all your investigations and this beautiful artwork and the history of what you've seen, how did you get into this initially?
Well, like you mentioned earlier, aviation is my passion. My dad used to take me to a place called Victory Air Museum, not too far from Chicago. And what they had here at this museum was just these old warbirds parked out in the weeds. And there was cracked windshields, there was chip paint, oxidized skin, there was skeleton type flight surfaces, and it just had this ghostly appeal. That was the beginning origin for my love of aviation. And then going to Oshkosh for literally 27 years in a row, I just started kind of piecing these things together, started researching classified aircraft within the military industrial complex. That led into the historical UFO cases, and then finally the UFO crash retrieval cases that were procured by Leonard Stringfield.
Wow. All right. Have you on the ground, I know you haven't in the air, have you ever had a weird encounter on the ground before we get into all these famous cases?
I have not had a unusual encounter on the ground, but you know what? It's interesting because I don't need to, and we don't need to, because we can rely on the data itself. The firsthand testimony of reliable military witnesses, military pilots who have seen these things. I've already been to the promised land. I don't need to see it. I know it's real, because if you go to NICAP.org and you click on 1952, you can spend an entire rainy Sunday afternoon going through all the military cases of where pilots are seeing these craft. They're being followed by these craft. It's undeniable, and it's a overabundance of data and research.
Of the 50,000 plus that you have investigated, can you say, is there a percentage that they were just bogus?
Absolutely. I don't know what that exact percentage is, but without a doubt, there's some hoaxes in here, certainly. But the other thing is, what I'm seeing when you look through these cases is there's a pattern recognition. There's a common denominator that's running through many of these cases. For instance, I'll give you an example. Many witnesses report tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the craft. Other witnesses report hearing a low-frequency electrical humming noise, like a sewing machine or an electrical transformer. So when you start piecing these things together, now you can see that the tapestry is beginning to come into view here.
Okay, well, I want to get started. I'm really interested. So
Okay.
beautiful artwork that you have commissioned. We're going to start with the USS FDR at Guantanamo Bay. You want to
Yes.
tell
Sure.
us about this? What is
Sure.
that?
Okay, so what we have here is, even before we begin, I do need to mention that the USS FDR aircraft carrier had a history of UFO sightings. And the reason we believe this is the case is because the USS FDR was the first aircraft carrier to carry nuclear weapons on board. So it's like whatever or whoever these UFOs are, they are monitoring our nuclear missile silos. They're monitoring large bodies of water. They're monitoring military places. They're monitoring research institutions like Los Alamos and Lawrence Livermore. They have some kind of interest in these type situations here.
Do you?
All right, so go ahead.
Can I ask you this real quick? Do you think it's because these beings are living with us on the planet and they're afraid we're going to mess up our planet? Or do you think they're afraid we're going to mess up something that will have residual effects and shockwaves that go into the universe?
Difficult to say, because this is a multi-pronged phenomenon here. We absolutely have man-made craft. There's a percentage, probably up to 80%. Then we have possible extraterrestrial. We have possible extratemporal from our future. Then we have USOs, unidentified submerged objects. So you can see there's so many things converging at the same place. The answer to this phenomenon is not just these are from visitors from space. They could be a prehistory, unknown, high technologically advanced civilization that has been here for thousands of years.
Wow.
So to set up the FDR case, it's late 1958, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. It's at night, and from the primary eyewitness, who is Chester Grzinski. Now, I spoke to him on the phone years ago. He's no longer with us, and we've got his documents and original sketches. As he said, that at night, there was commotion below decks, like screaming and yelling and swearing. All of these naval personnel were rushing up the ladders to get onto the flight deck. Now, you can see here, this is his original sketch. When they got up to the flight deck, and there were at least 24 other naval personnel with him, they looked up and they saw this 200-foot-long cigar-shaped craft that had rounded corners. And then he said that there were rectangular-type windows running along one side of it. They also said that they could feel the heat coming off this thing, and they could feel it on their faces. So it's now a close encounter of the first kind because it's a visual sighting. It's a close encounter of the second kind because it had physical effects. And then he said that he could see humanoid-looking beings, more than one, plural, walking back and forth between these windows. And then he said, this is the interesting part, one of them raised its hand above its head and was waving to the naval personnel back down below.
Wow.
And they're seeing all this. So now it's a CE1, it's a CE2, and it's a CE3. Now, to wrap this case up, this particular craft glowed a yellow-orange color and then took off like a spark on a grinding wheel and made no sonic boom back in 1958.
Wow.
And that's how it went down.
Any idea how often that happened? Was because you said it had a history.
Yeah.
Was that like a one-time deal? Do you know?
No, the USS FDR had a history of UFO/USO encounters. Wow. Yep.
Fascinating.
Good case because it's military personnel.
Yeah, military personnel. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm fascinated.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so the next one, what is this?
All right, so here we have March 22nd, 1966. This is Temple, Oklahoma. The primary eyewitness is a man named Eddie Laxon. He was a private pilot. He had over 5,000 hours. He was an expert at recognition. He was working at Shepherd Air Force Base as an electronics instructor. So it's 5:05 in the morning. He's driving down the road on his commute to work, and he's just having this leisurely drive, not thinking anything of it. The sun is just coming up above the horizon, so it's a little bit dark out, but you can still see a glisten of the sun coming up. And all of a sudden, something is blocking the road, perpendicular to the road. So he kind of hits his brakes, and what he sees is something that looks all the world like a bowling pin tipped over 90 degrees is now sitting horizontally. Now, he described this as a perch or fish-shaped object. That's the way he described it.
Wow.
It was 75 feet in length. It was 8 feet tall. And I'm going to start on the right-hand side here. There was a bubble transparent canopy that looked like it came off a World War II B-26. Just aft of that, there were 2 beaming spotlights that were forward. Additional 2 beaming spotlights that were shining vertically downward. The whole craft was being supported off the concrete pavement by what looked like 3-foot-tall pogo landing gear, lunar landing gear. That's what it kind of looked like. Now, aft of the first forward landing gear, there was an air stair door that was opened up. And right next to the air stair door was a man, not an alien, not an extraterrestrial. There was a man, okay? He was wearing 2-piece green military fatigues. He had a baseball cap with the bill turned up. He was shining a flashlight toward the bottom of the stairs. Directly above the air stair door, there was a stinger or spire that swept back toward the trailing edge of the craft that terminated in an 8-inch diameter sphere. Just aft of that spire and aft of the air stair door on the right side of the craft, which you see in the illustration here, there was a 3.5-foot diameter porthole window divided into 4 equal pie segments. Directly aft of that, written in black letters vertically, were the letters TL4768 written on the side of the craft. At the very back of the craft, there was what looked like flight controls that were way too small to be aerodynamically efficient. Now, when the man with the flashlight, who was wearing the fatigue, saw Eddie Laxon, because Eddie was going back to his trunk to go get a camera, this guy scurried up the air stair door. He closed the door, and then there was a high-pitched drilling noise, which pops up multiple times on these cases. A high-pitched drilling noise. The whole craft hovered off the ground for 50 feet, sat there for about 30 seconds, and then departed like a spark on a grinding wheel. And that's how it went down.
And the man in the military outfit that looked to be human with the ball cap.
He's absolutely human.
He's human. He got on board and it took off.
He got on board. That's correct.
Right.
Now, Eddie Laxon said that he was so close to this guy, he could recognize him in town later this afternoon. That's how close he was.
That's how close he was.
Yes.
Michael, we got to take a quick break. Hold those thoughts because more questions. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of We Are Not Alone. Michael Scrat joins us today. He's a historian, a UFO expert, has explored and investigated over 50,000 UFO cases. Michael, this particular one we just talked about, so the guy got in the ship and it left. Is this military? Is this man-made? Is this how do you make sense of it?
The fact that it had a high-pitched drilling noise, that's one thing. The other thing is that there was a man there. Now, Eddie Laxon also said that it had what looked like naval-type insignias and chevrons on his shoulder. That's what he said. And the fact that it had the TL4768, it had a high-pitched drilling noise. There was a secondary witnesses that saw it as well, because he went down the road another half mile and he ran into a guy that was in a panel truck, and he was standing on the floorboards of the panel truck. And Eddie pulled over, talked to him, and said, "I just saw this crazy craft." And then the guy told Eddie, "This thing was chasing me." So there was 2 witnesses to this.
The military guy standing next to the air stair, did he not try to scare the observer away?
Nope, he just went right into the craft, closed the door, high-pitched drilling noise, and then it took off. Now, here's the thing that's very interesting. This was seen in 1966. That's 3 years prior to Apollo 11,
Hmm.
when the lunar lander landed at Tranquility Base with Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. Okay, so it appears that we've had the technology to go exo-atmospheric at least 3 years prior to Apollo 11. So did we really need the Saturn V booster with 7,700,000 pounds of static thrust with all the liquid rockets? Do we need the solid rocket boosters? Then we can extrapolate this even further and go to January 28th, 1986, where the 7 Challenger astronauts died, including teacher Krista McCullough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why weren't they briefed on this when we already had this technology?
How pretend you know the answer? What would it be?
Well, when you talk about classified black budget programs within the military industrial complex, and you have unacknowledged special access programs that bypass congressional oversight and bypass public scrutiny, many members in Congress, the Senate Arms House Services Committee, they don't have a need to know. They don't have a high enough security clearance, because now this information is no longer classified. It's proprietary because it's been handed off into the hands of the defense contractors.
Okay, let's jump to 1983.
Okay, so
All right, this looks like the stealth bomber.
what we're looking at here, I should preface that this is part of the Hudson Valley Boomerang wave. Between 1982 and 1989, there were at least 25,000 eyewitnesses that reported a massive boomerang-shaped craft that hovered silently. And what we have here is the 1983 sighting. This is literally 24 hours after Ronald Reagan gave his address to the nation talking about SDI Star Wars. 24 hours later, this thing was seen over the Taconic State Parkway. It was a massive craft, basically the size of a football field, hovering silent over the Taconic State Parkway. There are people living now, hearing this right now in real time, that saw this craft. I'm sure of it. There were hundreds of people that pulled off to the side of the road. They were looking up at this thing with their jaw just dropped down in absolute awe. What they describe is something that looked like the B-21 today, not the B-2 bomber, because the B-21 has a single triangle trailing edge. That's what it looked like. Now, they reported transparent panels on the bottom of the craft. People could look up inside the craft, and they said that they could see like tubes, pipes, cylinders, a cross beam and girder construction. There was a beaming searchlight that was going down to the Taconic State Parkway below. In a nutshell, that's this case.
Michael, I wonder, did so many people witness this?
Yes.
Were there any injuries from radiation or heat or blindness or?
No, there were no sicknesses associated with the Hudson Valley Boomerang case that I know of.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Would you say that this was military or something else?
Well, here's another thing. When you hear about this thing took place on a Thursday night, March 24th, 1983, Reagan gave his SDI March 23rd. So literally within 24 hours, this thing shows up. Now, when you hear about something happening on a Thursday, it's a good possibility it's one of ours for the following reason. When there's a classified test flight of one of our birds, it's usually done on a Thursday, because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is pre-flight. Thursday is the test flight. Friday's debrief. Saturday, Sunday, there's no one at the base. So in this case, I believe it's one of ours, and I believe it's a mobile airborne over-the-horizon radar system.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How many?
Still classified to this day.
So how do you come to figure all this out? This is
Just
fascinating.
Talking to witnesses, listening to what they're saying, looking at the understructure of this vehicle. We'll talk about the next case where the witnesses saw pipes and tubes and I-beams and girders and the lights flashed off in sequence.
Oh my gosh.
It's screaming man-made technology, but it's so wrapped up in deep black programs, it will not be released to the public.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and wow, we'll be back right after this.
So we have Monnique ODriscoll has just finished up her dinner engagement with her daughter named Monnique as well. This is in Kent, New York, 1983. They're driving down the road and they go to a place called White Pond that you see in this illustration here, which is very historically accurate. It was Monnique who saw the daughter who saw a light approaching their location. As they got closer to White Pond, which was frozen at the time, this was no light. This was a very large boomerang shaped craft that flew directly, repeat, directly over their vehicle. They're looking up at this thing. It parks itself over the frozen lake and does a flat 180-degree turn, is now coming, looking back at them. And then she said, all of these lights on the bottom of this craft started flashing. So the reds would go off, the yellows would go off, the greens would go off, the blues would go off, and then the whole pattern sequence would repeat itself. She also said that there was girder and diamond and grid-like work and vents on the bottom of this thing. It's screaming a man-made technology. So there's two witnesses to this case. Very good case. It's part of the Hudson Valley Boomerang sightings.
Michael, how many, 50,000 cases you've investigated, how many do you think are military?
Large percentage, but they don't want to know that. They don't want people to know that. They want to paint their own classified aircraft with the UFO brush to keep people like you and me from looking any further.
Okay. So I've heard this before. Very, very interesting. So let me ask you, do you think there are, I know we talked about all sorts of different explanations for UFOs or UAPs,
right?
But do you think there are aliens from other planets or systems that are visiting us and are on the planet now?
The only way I could answer that is if you look back in history. Now, I'm not saying that everything is man-made and everything is military. I'm saying that a large percentage are, maybe up to 80%, but there is a core of reality to this phenomenon. Two examples. 1856 over Oaxaca, Mexico. There were hundreds of people in the town. Over 6 hours, they saw an absolutely large, massive, golden-colored trumpet hovering over the town of Oaxaca, Mexico. Very historical case. It's well known. If we go even further back, the time of 100 BC, the Roman army reported flying shields. So we didn't have any defense contractors back then. So there is a core of reality to this phenomenon.
Wow. Why do you think we don't know, we the people, don't know more about this?
Because when you talk about UFO crash retrievals, it is the crown jewel in the United States government. The whole concept of UFO crash retrievals was classified so high, they classified it above top secret. It is the crown jewels. It is the silver bullets. And that's how Timothy Good got the name of his book, Above Top Secret. That's where it was classified higher than the atomic bomb during World War II. And we had David Grush come out not too long ago that he said that there's an ongoing UFO crash retrieval program in open congressional hearings coming directly from him. And so you can see they're going to keep that under wraps because it's the propulsion system that is the most secret and classified. And even more secret and classified is the weapons advancement technology that they can exploit from the crash retrievals.
So I'm wondering, do we need to be afraid of our own people destroying the earth with weapons and all of this fancy technology?
I don't think it's the ETs that we need to. There's a threat. It's our own government. That's the secrecy is the surrounding the threat of this. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. We got to, we're closing out here. What do you want people to know?
I want people to know that we're spending billions of our own tax dollars on these programs. And since the United States government, the U.S. Air Force, is nothing more than a temporary custodian of these assets, because we as taxpayers, we own the runways, we own the Air Force bases, we pay for their salaries, we own the hangars, we own the planes. We have every right to question authority. And it's our First Amendment right of free speech to question authority. And that's what I just want everyone to know, that we do have a need to know on this, even though a lot of senators and congressmen don't have a high enough security clearance. It's up to us now. It's the final curtain call to track down these legacy crash retrieval witnesses, get them into open congressional hearing so that this information can be handed over to the scientific community and this information can be brought out.
Quick question. Does the president know? Does President Trump know?
I don't believe President Trump has a high enough security clearance. He doesn't have a need to know because he's a temporary employee.
That's right. Okay.
He doesn't have access to the vaults at Air Force Plane 42.
Michael, fascinating. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I've got 2 books. One's called Dark Files, A Pictorial History of Lost and Forgotten UFO Encounters. The other one is called Disclosure and Illustrated History.
Michael Schrout, thank you so much for joining us. All the best to you, and please be careful. And to all of you, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. I'm May K. Beeler for We're Not Alone on Queen City News Plus.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.